The day I learned something was wrong with me, how childhood experiences shape self worth long before we realize it. Before we begin, I want to tell you guys something. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not here to tell you what your story means. I'm sharing my lived experiences as someone who spent years believing that there was something fundamentally wrong with her. And today I create spaces where women come together to better understand themselves, their patterns, and their stories. The question that followed me for years, what's wrong with me? For most of my life, I carried this question everywhere I went. I didn't know where it came from. I only knew that it was there. So I'm somebody that has done quite extensive therapeutic work. And from doing the work, I realized that it keeps going back to my childhood. The messages we receive become the stories we tell ourselves. Children don't decide who they are in isolation. When I was born, I was dependent on my parents to take care of me. My caregivers were supposed to, feed me, bathe me, and make sure that I feel protected. So children learn who they are through the reaction, responses, and reflections of the people around them. Sometimes the messages are spoken, and sometimes they're not. I was always the weird one. Growing up, I was often told that I was too curious, too outspoken, too carefree, too different. I had two older sisters. One was 10 years older than me, one was 8 years older than me, and they were both, of course, from a different time. They grew up under different circumstances, so they were always quite complacent. But when I was born, I was, of course, the youngest one, and I always had this carefree personality where I would say whatever I wanted and I would do whatever I wanted. And because I was the youngest one, everyone kind of went along with it and they did not like it. So they started bullying me from a very young age, saying, "Oh my God, you're so weird, you're so crazy, you're this, you're that." I remember watching Home Alone. And I remember that Kevin was being bullied by his older brother. And I remember during that movie, when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's how my siblings can be like that with me sometimes. But of course, my parents always shrugged it off. They told me that I was probably being too sensitive, or they sometimes scolded them. But my sisters always carried this narrative where they would tell me that I was just really weird. So at the time, they seemed like harmless labels, just sibling rivalry or whatever you want to call it. But over time, those labels became a part of how I saw myself. So today, I actually want to open up about a time when everything changed for me. So when I was doing the therapeutic work, I remember my therapist would tell me, close your eyes, like go back in time. When do you think everything started becoming extremely difficult for you? And every time I've done this exercise, I keep going back to this moment. And it all happened when I was in sixth grade. So when I was in sixth grade, I was this like really carefree kid that was just always speaking her mind. And I was sitting among a bunch of girls and I said, "Oh my God, I really, really, really want to get married." Now, ladies, please do the math. I'm going to be turning 37 just like in a few months. I'm turning 37 in September. So do the math. I grew up in Pakistan in a small town. This was in sixth grade, before internet, before cell phones. And some topics are still pretty tabooed in some parts of the world. And from where I come from, because this was a small town and many people sometimes don't have the exposure and they try to raise extremely complacent girls, this was not something that I probably should have said. But I did it because that's just who I was. So one of the girls went home and she told her mom. And I truly meant it in the sense of like festivities, parties, clothing, because I saw some family members get married a few months ago. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I want to get married now. And like in a very childish, very carefree way. That's just how I was. So one of the girls went home and she told her mom. And her mom called my mom and said, "Oh my God, your daughter is being a really bad influence on all the other girls in the class. If she doesn't stop, I'm gonna pull her out of school. I don't want my daughter to hang out with your daughter, and like you need to get a hold of this situation." And my mom was somebody that put a lot of emphasis, energy into putting up this image that we were a quite functional family that had it all together. When In reality, we were actually quite dysfunctional. So she was extremely offended by this. And of course, like she was mad at me. So I remember that day, it was probably like, I remember that it was a Thursday. I remember that very vividly. It was a Thursday. It was during the afternoon. I was playing out in the swing. Some of my cousins were visiting from another town, and my aunt was there. My grandparents were there. Some of my siblings were there. So it was a crowd. And I was just playing with all these other kids. So she came running out and she started beating me. And I was like, wait, what happened? Like, I didn't break anything. I didn't push anybody to the side. Like, what happened? Like, I actually have been playing pretty nicely and I'm being really good to all these other kids. What happened? And she was just so mad at me. And she asked one of my sisters to go get the scissors. And because they were so complacent and they were just really good girls, they didn't ask why. They just went and got them. And I remember standing there thinking, what did I do? She didn't tell me what happened. I didn't know what happened. And then all of a sudden, when my sister brought the scissors, she chopped all my hair off in front of all the other kids because she was basically trying to prove a point. She was punishing me for, ruining this image that she has created in society among all these people that she knew that she was like this somebody that was raising these amazing girls that would never do anything that was out of the ordinary. And here I made this mistake of saying the sentence that I wanted to get married, which was not something that I was supposed to say. So instead of sitting me down, instead of talking me through this, instead of saying, oh my God, why would you say something like that? Like, people could take it the wrong way. Like, this is not something that you should have said, or don't talk like that in front of people that we don't know. Just if you want to say silly things like that, do it in front of family, whatever. None of that. She just punished me in such a severe way that scarred me for life. It scarred me for life because I truly believe that she didn't just cut off my hair. A part of me died that day. A part of me literally died that day. And the meaning I made from this extremely horrific event was that I didn't hear that you made a mistake. I heard that something about me is wrong, that everything that my siblings have been saying so far, oh my God, that's so true. Like, I am a weird individual. Being myself gets me in trouble. My voice isn't safe. I need to be more careful and I need to start monitoring myself. So, looking back, I think it was the beginning of shame. The shame that I've lived with for years, it was literally the beginning of that. Not because I felt guilty, not because I thought I was a bad person, but because I started believing that parts of me needed to be hidden, controlled, or changed. That carefree girl, the outspoken girl, the curious girl, the playful girl, the trusting girl, she was gone. What shame looked like for me. Shame didn't look like hating myself. Shame looked like constantly monitoring myself. I became extremely hypervigilant, constantly overthinking what I said, worrying about how I was being perceived, editing my personality, turned into a completely shapeshifter because I just needed to survive. I didn't want to get myself into a trouble where I would become a target of some sort of public humiliation again. So I just became extremely cautious, hiding parts of myself, being embarrassed by who I naturally was. I thought I was being careful. I didn't realize I was carrying shame. Shame taught me to perform. Instead of asking, what do I think? I asked, what people will approve of. Like, should I say this? Should I not say this? Should I wear this? Should I not wear this? Instead of asking, what do I want? I asked, what will keep me accepted? Slowly, I stopped becoming myself and started becoming whoever felt safest to be. The cost of shame. For me, shame created fear of being seen, fear of judgment, difficulty trusting myself, difficulty forming my own opinions, constant self monitoring, feeling disconnected from who I really was. The ultimate goal of existence became acceptance, not authenticity. So here's the thing, what shame wants us to believe. Shame wants us to believe if I were different, I would finally be accepted. But no amount of performing ever created real safety because the performance was never the real me. So if you recognize yourself in this story, maybe you spend years shrinking yourself, editing yourself, performing, monitoring, trying to become someone easier to accept. If so, you're not alone. Many of us learned these patterns long before we understood where they came from. So next week, because this month is dedicated to shame and every week has a topic, this was, what is shame and how sometimes, it's born out of a self-worth wound. Next week, we're going to talk about how shame turns inward. In this video, we explored how shame begins. And next week, we'll explore what happens when shame turns inward. So, how it becomes self criticism, self hatred, self sabotage, and the invisible ways it keeps us stuck. If you want to go deeper inside my all women community, we explore these patterns together, not through judgment, not through perfection, but through awareness, reflection, connection, and honest conversation. If you're ready to understand yourself on a deeper level, I'd love to have you join us. Link is in the bio, and I'll post a video very soon on the topic of when hate turns inward, how shame affects us in so many ways. I'll see you guys very soon. Take care. Bye bye.